will start by saying that Bully is one of the most prominent Israeli writers of our generation, and he's my favorite one. Now, that's not fair to say because I have a personal interest in these relationships. First of all, Bully was born in Jerusalem. He's fifth generation Jerusalemite. So am I. Though we came from different origins, or our families came from different parts of the world of Jerusalem. But the fact that we are both five-generation Jerusalemites makes us connected. Secondly, when he studied literature and philosophy at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and he did his PhD dissertation, he worked for a living as a teacher of literature. And he taught at the school that I studied in Jerusalem, the Bet College. Now, the class was not so important to me. Much more than that was the book club that he had. So here is the bright, young professor who has a book club in his own residence, a student residence. And I will never forget the evenings when we used to go to his place. It was terribly winter. We sat on the floor on rugs and leaning and talking about literature. And I will never forget the Heinrich von Kleist, Michael Kollas. That was the book that he taught me, and I can tell you what he told me that these evenings. I'll never forget that. And something else that he did for me, I'm sure he doesn't remember that. When I was in the Boy Scouts, we had a play one day, and he was the director of the play. You remember that, Bully? I do. So you see that the connections go far back. During that period, he published his first book of stories, Mot HaZaken, The Death of the Old Man. And this new style, new approach to literature in Israel was very unique and very novel, and it really touched people, young people like me. Since then, he had taught comparative and Hebrew literature at the University of Haifa, where he holds the rank of full professor. He was a writer in residence in St. Cross College, Oxford, and he also been visiting professor at Harvard, Princeton, Chicago, and many other university institutions. But beyond that, he published since then 10 novels, 3 books of short stories, 4 plays, and 4 collections of essays. If you look at Wikipedia, which has the entire list of his products, intellectual and artistic products, you will find that Harold Bloom compared Yehoshua to William Faulkner, and he also mentioned him in his book, the Western Canon. Bully got many Israeli prizes: the Bialik Prize for Literature, the Brenner Prize for Literature, and of course the Israel Prize for Literature. Another reason why I appreciate him so much is that Bully is a really involved citizen. He's not just a writer, but he's an involved citizen. And he is not shy to present his positions in many different topics of the day, and to criticize the government, whoever the government is, whether from left or right, or from right or left, on many issues, not only about the peace process, and the territories, and the settlements, but also about other social issues that are so central to Israeli survival. So we all appreciate not only his contribution to literature, but also to Israeli culture in general. I want to welcome Ika, Bully's wife, who is with him, and I will be happy to listen to what he has to say. He will talk for about 45 minutes or so, and then we can have a general conversation. Bully, the floor is yours.
If someone will ask what is the main problem that identify Jews, it is questions of identity. If you examine literature, if you examine many other things, you would find that for many, many years, I think even from the starting of the creation of these people, one of the main problems is to shape and to understand his identity and the debate about his identity. I think that today, when we are looking upon what is happening in Israel internally and externally, the question of the relationship with the Arab world and with the Palestinian, and also the main problems inside Israel are connected to questions of identity. So this is the reason why I was decided to come here and to do definitions. Meaning, before everyone is doing his own salad of identity and trying to say I am more Jewish, more Israeli, Zionist, not Zionist, here and there, like three strings on a guitar in which everyone is playing his own music in this guitar and emphasizing one string on another, etc. I think that it is very important in the internal debate in Israel and also the questions of Israel vis-à-vis the world to define the basic terms of identity that every one of us is using, and in the world, in the external world, is also using the question of who is a Jew, who is a Zionist, and who is an Israeli. Meaning I try to give definitions, and as I say definition, I intend to give a rigorous definition. If I will have to define what is a chair, I have to put in my definition, or my definition has to express all the chairs that have been existed in history and all the chairs that will be produced in the future, including this right definition has to include the chairs that will be in the satellites that will go to Centaurus or to the moon or whatever. Meaning this is a definition. And when you take a definition, you cannot speak about a chair is done by wood or by leather, or you have to have 4 legs, etc. You have to omit all these things and put the essential thing that make the difference between a chair and a sofa or an armchair, whatever it is. So this is what I intend to do now, to do definitions and to try in this definition to include all the possible things that are related to this term and to exclude all the other things that are not related to this term. So, first of all, who is a Jew? And this is becoming the most, I would say, disturbing question that is repeated all the time. Who is a Jew? And how many symposium and how many articles and how many people are gaining their life from the discussion who is a Jew. Just one example, the fact that the law of return in Israel has changed 3 times during 63 years. The definition of a Jew in the law of return can express the problematic problem of this term. How it is possible that during 63 years the Israeli government or the Israeli parliament has to change the definition of a Jew in the law of return, because this is the only place in which there is a definition. In the diaspora nobody needed definition. But because when Israel was created and there was established the law of return, immediately Israel was obliged against its will to define who is a Jew, because only a Jew can get this citizenship. I remember that Ben Gurion was asking, it was even published in a small book, he was forwarding this question, who is a Jew, to 60 or 70 sages of Israel, including secular and religious from all sorts in Israel and outside Israel. And there were different answers, of course, but there was those who were saying to him, take your hands off this question. Why you have to deal with this question? If you are going to get sores. In this sense, I say it because because in the way in which we are discussing the question who is a Jew, it is as same as these people of 3,300 years did not have enough time to resolve this problem. Or perhaps he does not have other problems, so this is the way in which he is dealing all the time with the question of Jews. But it is not like this. There is a real problem in the definition of the Jew. And this is the reason why we are repeatedly, and I have to say even in the future, will repeatedly return to this question and be embarrassed by this question. So who is a Jew? We will take the religious definition of who is a Jew that was established according to the tradition after the destruction of the first temple, meaning about 500 years before Jesus Christ. And it was given when there was the immigrants from Babylon after a very short exile were returning back to Eretz Israel. And then, according to the tradition, more or less, the definition was done, or the first halachic definition was shaped. So what is this definition? A Jew is a child of a Jewish mother. Okay, so how the Jewish mother got his Jewishness? Because she is a child of a Jewish mother. So how the grandmother was becoming Jewish? Because she is a child of a Jewish mother. This is the definition. It's unbelievable how empty is this definition. There is no indication at all about the Jews that have to believe in a certain country in order to be Jewish, or in Eretz Israel. Nor it says something about the fact that a Jew has to speak Hebrew in order to be Jewish. Nor it says something about the Jews that have to be committed to other Jewish community in order to prove that he is a Jew. But the most astonishing thing is that the fact that a Jew doesn't believe in God, doesn't ought to believe in God in order to be Jewish. There is nothing religious in this halachic definition. Nothing mentioning the fact that a Jew has to believe in God, in Torah Moshe or whatever it is, in order to be considered as Jewish. So it is a mistake, a logical mistake, I have to say to you. When people are saying Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and Buddhist, it is a mistake. It is a logical mistake. You cannot say a sentence like that. You have to say Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, and religious Jew. This is the correct way, the logical way to say this sentence. Because nothing is indicating that a Jew is an affiliation to a certain religion. If you want to speak about a Jew as a religious creature, you have to mention religious Jew. What is right is to say Danish, French, Jewish, and Chinese. This is a right sentence to say. Because then you indicate that the Jew is affiliation to a certain people, like Danish, like French, like Chinese, and others. This is the correct distinction between a Jew and not a Jew. It is not according to religion. I have to say it very clearly because this is one of the main problems that are confusing between religious Jew and Jew. You know that if the halachic wanted to say that a Jew is a person who believes in Torah Moshe, until 200 years, 99% of the Jews were religious. And it was very easy to say a Jew, this is the definition, a Jew is a person who believes in Jewish law or Jewish religion. But the religious did not say this. Meaning that if a Christian, a man, will come to the Pope and say to him, I don't believe in any word in the New Testament, am I Christian? He will say, of course you are not Christian. And if a Muslim will come to the Imam and say, I don't believe anything in the Quran, he don't believe in God at all, he say, you are not a Muslim. But if a Jew will come to the rabbi and burn the Bible in front of his eyes and say to him, am I Jewish according to your conception, to you, rabbi? He would say, unfortunately, you are Jewish. You are Jewish. And if after all he will do it, he will faint, immediately the rabbi will take him and rescue him and help him to have again his thought. So we see the Jew is not defined according to territory. A Jew is not defining against vis-a-vis language. He does not define according to commitment to other Jewish, obligation to other Jews. There is no a Jewish passport, something like that. It doesn't exist. And of course, also the question of religion. So what it is? So according to this definition, a Jew is a child of a Jewish mother. You would think that this is a race. A group that is getting its Jewishness by birth, through biology, through DNA, and things like that. But if you examine very thoroughly the question, you see that even the Jewish mother is not important. I can have a Jewish mother, and after this lecture I say, enough, I don't want to be Jew anymore. There is so little audience in front of me, why I have to be Jewish? I will go to the church and convert myself. And immediately, even I have a Jewish mother and grandmother and whatever it is, I will cease to be Jewish. Or if someone doesn't have a Jewish mother, and he wants to join this group because he says this is an elite group, I want to be also among them, he can convert himself to Jewishness and then he will become Jew. The conversion outside and inside are only corridors, only corridors. After I convert myself to Christianism, nobody can check if I am Christian or I am not Christian, but what is sure, I'm not Jewish anymore. Very easy. It is the most easiest people to get out and to get in also. The most easiest people. It's unbelievable. If you want to leave America, it is very difficult. You have to immigrate, you have to go to the tax authority to finish your tax problem, you have to get all the formalities. But if you want to get out from the Jewish people, it is very easy, and this what was done by millions of Jews during history. The number of Jews during the period of the second destruction of the Second Temple, meaning 70 AD, the number of the Jews in the ancient world was between 4 and 6 million. 4 and 6 million was a considerable number in the ancient world that is considered to have about 70 million. I'm thinking about the Roman world. In the beginning of the 18th century, the number of the Jew was only 1 million. What was happening during 1800 years? A lot of Jews had left the Jewish people. It was even more, I would say, definitive leave than it is today. Today you can assimilate yourself, but you are not obliged to convert yourself. But in the world of antiquities and in the Middle Ages and afterwards, you cannot, when a world was composed mainly by religion as a sign of identity, in order to assimilate yourself, you have to convert yourself. And this is what was done with millions of Jews that had left the Jewish people and disappeared totally among people, and nobody had trace of them. So if I again examine the question, the definition of the halacha, a Jew is a child of a Jewish mother, I see that even the Jewish mother is not necessary. So what is the definition? I want just to say here a remark. Because of the Holocaust, people think that a Jew could not get rid of Jewishness because during 12 years during the Holocaust or during the Nazi regime, there were regimes that did not let the Jew, even if a Jew was saying, I'm not a Jew, they would consider him as a Jew. But of course, Hitler is not defining who is a Jew and who is not a Jew, even if he had the power to kill Jews. In the ghettos, in East Europe and in Germany, there were in the Jewish ghettos created by the Nazis, there were Christians who were considered by the Nazis as Jews, but they were building also, having their churches there, and of course, even if they were killed as Jews by the Nazis, they were not Jewish. I respect their will and not the will of Hitler. So the most ugly sentence that I don't want to hear is people saying to a Jew, if you will try to run out from the Jewish people, there is the anti-Semite that is waiting for you to catch you. This is terrible. The Jews are not depending on the Jewish identity, don't depend on if there is an anti-Semite or there is an anti-Semite. So against the emptiness of the definitions that we have seen in the first part, we are discovering a liberty of choice in being a Jewish. A Jew is a person who identifies himself as a Jew. A Jew is a person who declares himself as a Jew. You would think this is unbelievable, how this is a definition of a poet, of a writer. But I would say to you that in the first 10 years of the existence of Israel, when millions of Jews, 1.5 million Jews were coming to Israel, the definition of Jew in the law of return was a Jew is according to his declaration. Unbelievable. This was the definition. And of course, this is a very, very complicated and problematic definition. What it means, I would say I am American because I declare myself an American. I'm French because I declare myself French. This definition is revealing the problematic aspect of being a Jewish and regarding the definition of a Jew. This is the emptiness in one hand and the liberty on the other hand. Make the definition of a Jew problematic, a chaotic, and even I would say anarchistic. And this in a way also is the cause of the projection of anti-Semite on the Jew, on this void, on this dark hole in the Jewish identity, to project things according to their demons, according to their frustration, according to their problems. But it is so easy to project their demons on the Jews because the Jew is not clear. We don't understand that the Jew is not clear. You will understand it very well because you live with people and you can go with someone and then after 5 months you will discover that he is a Jewish. How? There are Jews who would cover the Jewish. That's very easy to do it. So the problematic anarchistic element in the definition of a Jew will place the problem of the definition of a Jew to the future. And believe me, in the 100 years, there will be always lecturers that will come to Jews and ask them who is a Jew and give definition and will speak about the problematic. And this is becoming problematic today even more because for the first time in history there are people who want to be Jewish, who want to join the Jewish people from practical matter, because they can get citizenship in Israel with all what Israel can give. So it is becoming for Israel problems, what to do with tribes in Africa or in Ethiopia or in other places who are saying, yes, we are Jewish. And there will be always a reform rabbi, a crazy reform rabbi who will come there and do conversion very easy. So what will we do? Now we are coming to the question, who is a Zionist? And here, contrary to the term Jew, Zionist is a very, very simple term. And the definition for Zionist is very simple. What was done in the last years, especially by the Israelis themselves and by the people outside Israel, is to misuse the term Zionist in the most, I would say, disturbing way, in which Zionist is becoming a stone between the left and wing in Israel, and Zionist was becoming the heart of the target against Israel in outside Israel by non-Jews. And it is becoming a mess because people don't understand where Zionism starts and especially where Zionists stop. What is the definition of Zionism? And I recommend very much to my fellow Israelis, from the left and from the right, to reduce immensely the use of Zionism. Zionism was becoming a kind of ketchup that you put on any plate. And everyone wants to improve the taste of what he is doing, he put the ketchup. Zionist thinks that he is improving the taste. And what we have to abstain and to refrain from using the term Zionism so easily. So who is a Zionist? Here the definition is divided into two parts, until the creation of the State of Israel and after the creation of the State of Israel. So Zionist was a person, and the term Zionism was started only in the end of the 19th century. It is no use to speak about Zionism before the end of the 19th century, as you don't speak about socialism in the 18th century or in the 17th century. Zionism is from a certain period. It started towards the 1890 or something like that, in the end of the 19th century. It was created mainly in connection to the invention of the term anti-Semitism, that was also created for the first time as a term. Anti-Semitism was created in 1879 or 1880. So who is a Zionist? A Zionist is a person who wants to establish a Jewish state in Eretz Israel. And the most important word here is state. My forefathers, my ancestors were coming to Eretz Israel in the middle of the 19th century from Saloniki, as your parents or your ancestors, but they were not Zionists. They were coming to settle in Eretz Israel, in the Holy Land, but I would not consider them as Zionists. They were coming those who wanted to establish a state, and the key word is state. Those who wanted to establish a state, you will call them Zionists if they were coming to Israel or they did not come. The fact, Herzl, for example, was only 10 days in Eretz Israel. He was coming for 10 days, and then he cut his visit short. He was staying only 7 days. 10 days it was too much for him. So he was the founder of Zionism, yes, and still he was cutting his visit to 7 days. It was too much for him. But he is of course Zionist. You cannot say Herzl was not Zionist. He was creating. He was the most really marvelous person that he could see what is going to happen to the Jewish people. And he, from the margin of the Jewish people, as an assimilated Jew, could see better what rabbis and leaders of communities and others did not see. The Jews are going to hit hard their head in the war that is waiting for them. So Zionist is a person who wanted to establish a state. If he was coming to Eretz Israel or he didn't come, the wish to establish a state make him Zionist. Of course, the Zionist movement was a minority among the Jewish people. If there was free elections in the Jewish people in the beginning of the 20th century, free general election on the Jewish people, Zionists will get 8% of the vote. But because the religious were against them, the Bundists were against them, the socialists were against them, the reform movement was against them, and many, many other, all the parts of the Jewish people were against Zionism. The chance was that Zionists didn't have to get permission from the Jewish people to come to Eretz Israel. They didn't have to wait for the decision of the Jewish people to come to Eretz Israel or not to come to Eretz Israel. So they have done it opposite to the free will of the Jewish people. And this is because of these people, of course, we had after the Holocaust not just museum of the Holocaust, but a state that could a little bit console us after what was happening to us. But in this sense, Zionism was a minority inside the Jewish people, and I have to stress it because after this, in 1917, when Balfour Declaration was given, in Eretz Israel were 50,000 Jews against 550,000 Palestinians. And the Jews were in a huge immigration from east to west after this First World War. But only about, after the Balfour Declaration was given, only 30,000 Jews were coming in the 4 years after the Balfour Declaration was given us the possibility to create a homeland in Eretz Israel. The fact that we did not establish a state before the Holocaust, and it was possible to establish a state before the Holocaust in the 20s, if only 5%, 6% of the Jews would come to Eretz Israel instead of 1 promille or 0.5%. We could have a state before the Holocaust on all the territory or even of half the territory. And then we could give already passports to Jews from Romania, from Poland in the 30s, and we could avoid, I didn't say that we could dismiss totally the effect of the Holocaust, but we could save millions of Jews from the Holocaust. The fact that we have not done it, we don't have to accuse nor the Arabs, nor the British, but only ourselves. Not the Zionists. The Zionists were right, but the Jewish people were wrong. And what was happening, of course, what was happening in the Holocaust, it is also the great failure of the Jewish people. They did not understood what is going to confront, and the fact that this anti-Semitism, that was all the time, that the Jewish people did not read correctly history. All the time we didn't read correctly history. So Zionists were people who wanted to create a state. When the state was created, who is Zionist? Only on one thing. A Zionist is a person who confirms the principle that he is for the law of return. The law of return is saying like this: the state is belonging to its citizens, to all its citizens, Jews, Arab, Druze, whatever it is, those who have the right to vote to the parliament. And the country is run by the parliament. But if a Jew wants to become a citizen of Israel, he has the right to do it automatically. Those who confirm this rule are Zionists, those who are against it are non-Zionists. That's all. Nothing concerning the question of the territories has to do with Zionism. Nothing that is concerned with the problem, the relation between religion and state is a question of Zionism. Nor the left, not the right. I have to express it very, very explicitly, that the question of Zionism is nothing to do with all the very serious debates we have in Israel. Zionism is not a word replacing patriotism or pioneering. These are legitimate words that you can define them and give them. A person working in a supermarket is not less Zionist than an Air Force pilot or a person who is a pioneer in the desert. There's nothing of this kind. Zionism is not ideology. This is the key word. Zionism is not ideology, but a platform of different and contradictory ideologies, from left to right, from fascism to socialism or to radicalism. You can be Zionist only by confirming the rule that Israel, the state of Israel, doesn't belong only to its citizens, but also to the Jewish people, and the demonstration of this is coming by the law of return. That's it. And it is very important, because I think that on the question of the territories, there will be a very dark days when perhaps the government of Israel will decide to help the creation of the Palestinian state. And immediately there can be even a kind of a civil war between the settlers and the government, as it was already shown in many occasions when we had taken out settlements from Gaza and from Sinai. It will be difficult, and there can be a civil war. Many countries had civil war. This country, of course, had a very bloody civil war. I hope it will not be bloody in our country. But we have to avoid the use of Zionism in the very important battle between left and right, or between settlers and non-settlers. So the question has to be clear. And also for the people outside, the Arabs that are accusing all the time Zionism, or the students at Harvard or at Berkeley or in other places who are saying, we like Israel, we are for Israel, but Israel has to de-Zionize itself. It is nonsense. The question of the law of return is not a racist, and not a racist law. The Palestinian state will have also a law of return for all the Palestinian refugees that will have the right to return to Palestine, to the Palestinian state. In Hungary, there is also a law of return. The law of return is the moral condition for which the United Nations had created the state of Israel, in order that this state will not be only for the 600,000 Jews that were living in 48 in Palestine, but to give a solution to the Jewish problem. Now we are coming to the last term, and this is Israel. And this will annoy some of you, so I take some water. Israeli, like Danish, like French, like British, like all other things, have two levels of meaning: citizenship and identity. When a Pakistani is coming to England, to the Heathrow airport, and he has a British passport that he got from his father, I don't know, for his services for the British Empire 100 years ago. He is British like the Prime Minister of Britain, but he doesn't have any British identity yet. Perhaps he will have it, but yet he doesn't even speak English. So there is citizenship, always an identity. My nephew was born in America and automatically he got American passport. So he's citizen of America. But he doesn't want to be American. He doesn't want to have the American identity. He has nothing to do with America. He has a citizenship. That's all. Citizenship and identity is two different things everywhere. In Israel, we have now, I don't know, 7 million people. Among them, 1.5 million Arabs, Druze, and others who have Israeli citizenship, and they are citizens of Israel. They are Israeli. And they have the right to vote to the parliament and to decide the fate of this country, of our country, as the Jews. One of the most, I would say, good days in this trial of our president. You know, our president was jailed. He's jailed. I don't know if he will be jailed, but I hope he will be jailed. But anyhow, what he was doing, who judged him? Who judged the president? The head of the court was an Arab, Israeli, Palestinian, Christian, who was in the head of the court with two other women judges. And this was for me a symbolic, because the sentence and the verdict was extremely important for the future of Israel about many, many things I don't want to enter. But the fact that this is an Arab that was judging the president of Israel as an Israeli. And these are Israelis among what we call citizenship. Among citizenship, there are, of course, 1.5 million Arabs, Palestinian, Druze, and others who are national minority, but also have, of course, the Israeli citizenship, and with this Israeli citizenship, they are participating in their way, more or less, in the form of Israel, the creation of Israel. But there is also the question of identity. And here in the identity, this is what I say to the American Jews and to other Jews, we are total Jew. Meaning, what mean total Jews? We take this emptiness that was in the definition of a Jew living in the diaspora and put a total obligation on this identity. And in this identity and with that identity, we have to answer thousands of new questions. Never a Jew had to answer them as a Jew. To bomb a civilian population in Gaza, yes or no? To sell arms to a dictatorship in Africa in order to avoid unemployment in Israel, yes or no? What will be the rate of welfare? How much unemployment has to be done in the country? So many, many questions of the totality of life that the Jews, the Israel society have to give Jewish answers, and by this to determine Jewish values. The Jewish values are not in books, not in the sermons that the rabbi in the synagogue is giving to you. This is just text. The Jewish values are determined every day by what the Jews is doing and how they are answering the totality of life. In the way an Israeli soldier is facing a Palestinian protest, and by having his rifle, the angle in which his rifle is placed, like this or like that, this is the way in which a Jewish value is determined. Because if we put it like this, he can risk his life. So the way in which he is using his rifle, his weapons, against children and women, also by risking his life, a Jewish value is determined, and the way in which he gets the order on this, And this is a constant, not one decision, but a constant thing that is one decision. In this sense, the totality of life is the Israelis. And I have to say it because people think when I say a total Jew, I say good Jew. I never use the word good Jew and bad Jew. I don't know what it is. I don't know what is a good American and a bad American. I know only one criteria: good man, bad man. And with this criteria, I can go even to China and to say to you who is a good and who is bad. There is nothing to speak about good and bad when speaking about totality and partiality. But I speak about the fact that we are facing totality, and even if you take a very religious Jew in the parliament, for example, religious Jew, that resemble to a religious Jew in Brooklyn or in other places. But this religious Jew in the parliament that are davening like the person in New York, it is a different Jew. Because he has to sit with people from the left in the commission in the parliament and decide if there will be homosexual marriage or not. Or if you have to recognize the children of homosexual as legitimate and give them a social fair, etc. So this is totally different. The Jews in the diaspora, they don't meet between themselves. Every faction is in faction. But in Israel you are obliged, you are bound to participate together and to get decision and to decide. This is the totality. And this is the reason why we are using the word Israeli. We are returning back to the ancient word that defined the Jew, Israel. In the Bible, you will find only Israel. In the book of prayer, you will not find the word Jew. Book of prayer, but Israel. Am Israel, Bnei Israel. If David, if Moses, if all the prophet will enter this room and you will ask them who you are, they will say, we are Israelis, Bnei Israel. You will ask them, are you Jewish? They will say, we don't understand what you mean. What mean Jewish? So this is the return to the word Israeli with all the weight of being living in Eretz Israel, speaking Hebrew, and this is the totality. It's not easy, this totality. It's better to sit in Annapolis, for example, and go on Saturday to the synagogue and hear the rabbi speak about Tikkun Olam, meaning we are repairing the world. You have to repair your president, first of all. Your prime minister is in jail. Go to Israel and see how many murders are done. No, they are speaking about Tikkun Olam, the Jew, in the Reform synagogue, and very nice ceremonies about Tikkun Olam. Okay, Tikkun Olam, if this gives you the strength to stay Jews, why not? But we have to fight in order to Tikkun Israel, to try to improve Israel. And this is the totality, and this is the battlefield in which we are having defeats and from time to time some victories. So, to finish, now, I sum up the three terms. A Jew, the definition of a Jew revealed to us emptiness and liberty. And it is a problematic definition by its nature. We have to recognize it. I don't know what will happen in the future, but this is a problematic definition of a people. Zionist is only the confirmation of the law of return. That's all. Try to avoid the inflation in the use of Zionism everywhere, and especially the fact that Zionism is not an ideology. Israeli, we have to distinguish between the level of citizenship, as in another people, and the level of identity. As a citizen, of course, citizenship, it is the common citizenship of 7 million and something like that. whatever there are, from the different religions, etc., like other people. But as an identity, this is the totality of Jewishness. It is coming to exercise itself in life. Whatever we are doing for good and for the bad, this is the values that we have to determine for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Yes. All right. We got a lot of food for thought and for dispute if you want. So let's start. Yes, please.
Oh,
Sorry. You'll be the next one.
Thank you. Thank you for your talk. Identity, big issue. Big, important idea. Identity in Israel, as you made clear, is the totality, responding to totality. Those of us who live in the diaspora and probably will remain in the diaspora, very difficult question here, but would you have any advice to the American Jewish establishment to encourage identity, which often is serving, well, which is often put aside in favor of ritual and liturgy and the synagogue, but not identity necessarily. I mean, I'm asking if in the diaspora, how would identity play out? How would your thinking possibly play out as not Tikon Olam, so cavalierly stated, but very seriously committed? I guess a follow-up would be, is diaspora Judaism important? Are Jews in the diaspora important? Do we have a role? Sorry.
You want my question?
Yes, you want that I will answer this question, or you want?
I think so.
Better
Unless someone else wants to relate to that particular topic.
Yes, no, I think I will take 3 or 4 questions.
Okay.
Then
All right. So another question. Yes, please.
How would you translate Teudat Zehut?
What you think?
Teudat Zeut.
Yeah. How
do I-
would you translate Teudat Zehut?
Teudat Zehut is
Yeah.
a
Translate.
passport or whatever it is. It's a kind of a passport. You don't have an ID.
No. Literally. Miluli.
What, in English, how I would say
Yes.
Teudat Zehut? No.
Miluli. How would you, Teudat Zehut.
Teuda, we have many Teudot.
Okay.
So one of them is Teuda, that is identifying who I am. That is written there if I am, where I was born, if this picture, etc. ID.
Thank you.
ID.
מה
מה
הפירוש?
המשמעות? איך אתה רואה תעודת זהות בתור מישהו שגר בארץ?
תודה.
זה מה שהתכוון.
What's mean? No, but Teuda Zehut meaning, what is Teuda Zehut? Teuda is a document.
All right. Zehut. Zehut.
My Zehut.
Yeah.
I'm, as I said, I'm an Israeli. Yes, I'm an Israeli. What do you want? I'm an Israeli. Very clear. Why it is so difficult? I think I gave a whole lecture saying I'm Israeli, so I'm a total Jew by definition.
Okay.
By definition.
Okay, but Zehut translates to what?
Identity.
It's identity. Okay, so the label of citizenship, the Teudat Zehut, which would be your citizenship, actually is your identity.
No, the Teudat Zehut is only reflecting citizenship. Citizenship. This is what
Okay.
Teudat Zehut. And in the Arab has Teudat Zehut, the Druze has Teudat Zehut, everyone has Teudat Zehut to express his citizenship.
Okay,
And when you go to the vote for the parliament, you have to bring your Teudat Zehut. Otherwise, you will not be allowed. That's it. It's a very administrative thing.
Gamarna.
So it's okay, it's clear.
No, but that's okay.
Why not clear? Yeah.
I think he understood the question. Do you want
All
to
right, so
answer?
let's hear you. Go ahead.
How do you see,
How do I see
how
what?
do you see yourself? As a Jewish, as an Israeli, as a Zionist, or how do you define yourself?
I am an Israeli, meaning I am, first of all, have an Israeli citizenship. Secondly, I am the total Jew because as a Jew I have to deal with all the questions as an Israeli. I am the continuation of Moses, of David, of Isaiah, of all the people that have been Israelis in the. I have said to you, if you will ask Moses who you are, he would not say Jewish. He would say, I am Israeli. So I'm exactly like Moses. I don't believe in what he believes. Of course, I have discussion, but like this. You know, when America was founded in 1779, yes? Six. 1776. Already, after 2 years, Washington was American. Yes? George Washington, he was American. He is not less American than Obama. Even he was American for 2 years. Only. After 76, 2 years, George Washington or Jefferson are American. Now, I have, more than 2 years. I have 3,000 years with a country, with a territory, with language, with all these things. So what is the problem? What is the problem for my identity? Zionist, I was saying, yes, I confirm the right of return, the law of return, so in this sense I am Zionist. Very simple.
Yes.
First off, I just want to let you know that your paper, People Without a Land, definitely inspired me for that idea of a skin versus
Of what?
a piece of clothing.
See?
The idea of Judaism as being a Jew, whether it being like a skin versus a piece of clothing, a garment, that you discussed.
אי אפשר להוריד את זה.
Right? Whether you can take it off, whether you can put it back on.
The Jew.
Right. The person as a Jew, it's either a skin, like for Israelis.
Yes.
Skin,
The
for us
Jew.
Americans,
Right.
Jack, I think
Yes.
it's terrific. Second thing I wanted to ask is you talk about Israel as citizenship versus identity. As a Jew, as a partial Jew, because I live here in America, but I make, I guess you could say pilgrimages, right? Go over to Israel for study, for work, for a living, for extended periods of time. Can you have a partial identity with Israel as well, or is it?
No, I think that when I try to examine your identity vis-a-vis my identity, so I say you are American and you are participating in the most important things of America, yes, war and peace and whatever it is. You are American, first of all. But you cannot be two total. You are one total and one person. Now, the partiality is according to what you will do. You have friends that were studying with you that have nothing to do, Jews, that have nothing to do with Jewishness, yes? They have nothing to do with Jewishness. So you can say to them, you are Jews. They don't deny that they are Jews. But they would say, but you would say you are very partial Jew. My identity as Jewish, coming to lectures like this, participating in Jewish activity, is more Jewishness, my identity is more full with Jewish components than their identity. So if you are agreeing to the criteria of more and less, so you have to understand that when I am in Israel, I would say, locked in the totality. Locked in the totality. This is the reason in Israel, Israeli cannot be assimilated. Even if he doesn't know anything about Bialik or about the Bible or whatever it is. As in Britain, believe me, that those pilots who were defending England in the Second World War, when Churchill was saying to them, we are so many that owed so much to so few, they did not know, most of them did not know the names of the plays of Shakespeare. They knew better the players of the Manchester United. These pilots that were defending, but nobody would dare to say, because they didn't know the name of the play of Shakespeare, that they were less British. So the question, you are locked when you have the framework of your identity. You are a free Jew. I am not a free Jew. You are a free Jew in what sense? That no Jew can touch you. No Jew can touch you. No Jew can impose nothing on you. While I am in my country, Jew can send me to prison, Jew can send me to war, Jew can evacuate me from my house. This is a totally different kind of relation. And this is the Jews, why they go to the diaspora, because Jews have gone to the diaspora by their own will. They've gone to diaspora because they wanted to be free from the other Jews.
In speaking about the two aspects of Israeliness,
Of every people,
you talk about citizenship and identity. You spoke about the identity of Jews, but Arabs also have an identity.
Yes.
And Arabs also participate in the government and participate in the decisions.
Yes.
So in a sense, they also participate in establishing the values of the state. I would like to hear you elaborate a little bit more.
Yes, yes. As the Jews are participating in the decision of the American, and as the Arabs are participating in the decision, the shaping of the Jewish state. Yes. And they are working, not enough in my opinion, and because we have still hostility between us. But in the future, there will be a foreign minister of Israel who is an Arab, like there is a foreign minister of France who is a Jewish. So why not? They will participate, but they are shaping the Israeli codes, meaning they are shaping in a certain way the Jewish code. As the foreign minister of France, who is Jewish, is working for the identity of France, for the French identity of the French values. This day will come, and I hope it will come as soon as possible, because this is a huge minority, and I want them more to be involved in the Israeli decisions than to be separately and all the time clash with the Israeli identity. Yes?
This is a little bit similar to the first
Raise
question.
your voice, please.
This is a bit similar to the first question that was asked, but what do you see as the future of American Jewry and American Jewry's connection to Israel? Do you see it strengthening or weakening?
I'm not an expert of the Jewish American community. I have to say what I see and what I read is that the American Jewish identity is becoming more detached from Israel. More detached. Israel is not so much in public, especially in the last years with Israel is not a joy. Not a joy, Israel. It's not as it was before, 6-Day War, now it is corruption and problems and poverty and other problems. It's not a joy. Yes, of course, this is those who love Israel will love Israel even if it is not a great joy. But still, there are detachments. And what is replacing Israel? I hear about Tikkun Olam. I did not say it because Tikkun Olam, I don't know what Tikkun Olam, when are bombing the Afghans, this is Tikkun Olam, or Libya, or Vietnam was Tikkun Olam. I don't know. Tikkun Olam is American, Tikkun Olam is Jews. You are repairing the Americans, you are repairing yourself. All this, but it is very significant because I hear it everywhere. And I hear it even in Israel. This is an escape. Tikkun Olam is a way to escape the real dirty problems, but dirty, very dirty problems. And you have to give decisions there. And you give to the answers. Tikkun Olam put you in the heavens in a certain way. So, what I suggest to the Jews in America, that you will relate yourself more and more to the totality. First of all, by learning Hebrew. If you will learn Hebrew, you will be more close to the totality. You can benefit from this. You have to come more to Israel. And this is, you will increase the capacity or the component of your Jewish identity. This is my advice to you. Those who cannot or don't want to do it, we cannot say anything. Yes?
Yes, please.
You can, if you choose to answer this, you can answer it either as yourself or for Israelis in general. I think this is true both in Israel, maybe not as much as here, but there are many Jews, many liberal Jews here. Some who used to be my friends and relatives who are not anymore because of my views, but they feel, even though they want mostly to do everything that the Palestinians are asking and the President of the United States, Obama, is saying to do, they feel they're still supporting Israel, even though they want to give the Palestinians everything they want and that kind of thing. Do you, or does the general Israeli population regard those people as supporting Israel, or only the people that are more to the right and extremely to the right as don't give an inch or anything like that? How do
I will welcome everyone who is involved in Israel, in the internal debate in Israel, if it is from the right or from the left. Then to those alienated Jews that say, I don't care about it. So I, first of all, say to you very clearly, every Jew has the right to say whatever he wants about Israel. I would say even he has the duty to do it, as he has the duty and the right to speak about any other subject of the world, as I have the right to speak about your situation or about Guatemala and whatever it is. So first of all, the more involvement, I will welcome it, even if it is involvement from the opposite camp, the opposite political camp of mine. I would say, okay, he is concerned, he wants to participate. And this is, for me, it is a general human rule, value, to speak your mind, whatever it is, and you have the right to do it.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Small question. You're talking about totality, and at the same time, the world is going to a place where identities are switched much more easily. Because of different things that's happening in society, people can travel very easily, move
Globalization.
countries. What? Populations and also personal identity. A person, an Israeli, can live 10 years in Israel, then 10 years in the States, and 10 years in France, and go back to Israel. So in a way, what you're saying is opposite of what we see the trend in the world. If you can elaborate if you think that might change.
I have to say to you, still, when an aeroplane is failing between Ecuador and Peru, there is always 2 Jews and 1 Israeli. Why? I mean, there are so many, the Jews, Israelis, there are about 800,000 Jews outside Israel, and for a very small country, finally, I don't know how many Danish there are outside. So I cannot, this is a problem of the globalization, of changing places of things. But still, the Arabs are not traveling so much. Yes, you know, you go into the museum, you see Japanese, Chinese, perhaps some Spanish, but not Arabs. Arabs sitting in the homes, eating hummus and praying to God. I don't know. So if we will continue to travel so much, and they will not travel, the consequence would be that the state of Israel will dismantle by itself. You know, when Israel was founded, we had been 600,000 and the Arabs 120. We had an immense aliyah coming to our. And we have doubled our population by 10, something like that, from 600,000 to 6 million. They have doubled without any aliyah. without any immigration. They have double on 12 or 13 times. So the problem of being in your country, belonging, and regarding, as you say, you quote me that I see the Israeli identity of me as a skin and not of a jacket. This is the difference that I hope many Israelis are starting to feel it like this. And perhaps this will be that I'm not competing your number, but after 60 years of the existence of Israel, the majority of the Jews are already living in Israel. The majority of the Jews, the Jews that are really identifying themselves as Jews, not Jews that are from Jewish origin, as it is here. But the question of number is very important, and if you can join us, we will be very happy. Okay, the last question.
Do you think a Jew that makes Aliyah from the diaspora?
I don't hear well.
Say
Do you
again.
think that a Jew that makes Aliyah from the diaspora immediately becomes a total Jew when they walk off the plane, or it takes more than that?
Say it again. We didn't hear you. We didn't hear you.
הוא נהיה מיד יהודי טוטאלי,
Yeah.
או האם הוא נשאר משהו...
לא, זה תהליך.
He is becoming totally because immediately when you are entering, you have to vote, you have to say, you have to participate, you have to decide. The country is imposed upon you, all the decisions. You cannot run away from it. So you are immediately becoming totality. And I don't know if it's a joy. I don't say it's a joy. It is a burden, but there is some sense of satisfaction.
Let me ask you the last question, please.
Yes.
And that relates to your definition of Zionism. You said that Zionism is the confirmation of law of return and not ideology.
Not ideology.
I see the confirmation of law of return as an expression of an ideology.
No, because...
If the ideology is that Jews have the right to have their state, and therefore every Jew outside Israel have the right to be Israeli citizen automatically. So it's an ideology. The law of return is only a technique, a measure, a mean to materialize this ideology. Why do you ignore the element of ideology in Zionism?
Because when I speak about ideology, I will give you the definition of ideology coming from the Hebrew Encyclopedia. Ideology is a systematic, unified amalgamation of ideas, perceptions, principles, and obligations through which the particular world view of a sect, political party, or social class find its expression. When you speak about ideology, you speak about so many things that are involved in creating an ideology. You speak about ideology of the left, ideology of socialism, communist ideology, etc. Just to say that a person can become an Israeli, a Jew can become an Israeli, it's not ideology. You don't have to express that the Jews have only one country or they don't have to live in other countries. It doesn't say anything about this ideology. It's only the facts that, and as I said to you, Germany has the law of return. Hungary has the law of return. The Palestinians will have the law of return. So when I say it's not ideology, I want to say that all the other very firm ideologies, like left, right, socialist, religious, etc., this is ideologies, and they are fighting between themselves, accepting every one of them the rule of Zionism, the rule of the law of return. That's all. It's enough. So by this you avoid all this attack on the Zionism, because Zionism is attacked all the time. Hezbollah, for example, Sheikh Nasrallah from Hezbollah doesn't speak about Israel, he speaks about Zionists. In the Arab world, they speak all the time about Zionists, as if there is a defined kind of ideology. Ben Gurion wanted to give back all the territories, so he wasn't a Zionist. It's no use to use a very heavy word as ideology vis-a-vis Zionism. It will help all of us to get the real discussion between ideologies without all the time this catch-up of Zionism.
Thank you very much.